Hi, I'm Anthony NEWBOLD. Welcome to A Closer Look. We're still talking about Dorian and its aftermath. And so my guest is the co-chairman of the Disaster Relief and Reconstruction Committee, Mr. John Michael Clarke. Mr. Clarke, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I know who you are, and I guess people who are in construction, maybe engineers, would know who John Michael Clarke is, but the general public, I'm not sure a lot of them know who you are. Who were you before you accepted this assignment? What do you do?
Well, my name is John Michael Clarke. I'm a Bahamian. I was born here.
That's good.
My father was actually a priest.
Father Clarke?
Yes, Canon John, the late Canon John Clarke.
Okay.
So I grew up in and around the church. I attended St. Anne's High School. When I was finished with St. Anne's, I went to the College of the Bahamas. I was the first student to finish the Construction Engineering Technology program at the College of the Bahamas in 1987.
Okay.
And then I went off to Howard University.
Yeah.
I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering with focus in construction and structures. I have a master's degree in engineering with emphasis in environmental engineering and water resources. I came back to the Bahamas. I taught at the College of the Bahamas. I worked as a project manager for Carl D. Trico, a project engineer and apprentice quantity surveyor at Carl D. Trico. I went on to Cavalier Construction Company, where I worked as a project manager for a number of years. And then I opened Veritas Consultants Limited in 2000, and we're going into our 20th year. And since that time, Veritas is like electricity. You don't see us, but we exist.
But you exist, huh?
We exist, and we have existed on some notable projects like the Airport Gateway. We were the government agents for the Airport Gateway, the Critical Care Block, the recent Fusion Complex. We played a significant role there. And many projects.
Many more
than we have the time for.
I think anybody who's listening or watching this would begin to feel comfortable, if they're not already, that you know what you're doing, reconstruction.
Let me just add one more, though, that you may not know. The ZNS Tower.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were the
People
project
managers.
Yes, we were the ones that were the project managers for the new ZNS Tower at Howell Point a few years back. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, and I know all that, huge projects, certainly very important ones. What made you decide to accept this assignment?
The way that the assignment was couched to me, it was kind of hard to say no.
Okay.
You know, I got a call, and the person on the end of the call says, look, the Prime Minister has asked if you would consider assisting us with the relief and reconstruction effort for Dorian. And knowing the extent and the devastation, I couldn't say no to that.
Yeah.
I couldn't say no.
How permanent is this posting? How long is this supposed to last?
My CFO asked the same question.
Yeah, you want to know.
They want to know. Well, response time, you can put a timeline to. That response happens in weeks.
Yeah.
Initial recovery is months. Reconstruction can take years. In my mind, I think if we're talking reconstruction through the first reconstruction period, I would not give credence to any more than 2 years.
Yeah.
For at least in the role that I'm assisting in right now. Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Describe for me what it was like walking into NEMA for the first time.
Oh, wow. That first day I walked in, people were literally everywhere.
Yeah.
People were everywhere. Of course, it was busy. It was buzzing. And there were a lot of things going on. My very first NEMA meeting, we were talking about, it was with the Defense Force commander. And she, along with Captain Miller, they were trying to organize relief response from the Defense Force. And this was Tuesday evening. And we were like, well, okay, can we get into Abaco? And the answer, unfortunately, was no, the boats could not go because the sea swells were too high, and we couldn't communicate. So there was, it seemed like that would be a hopeless moment, But still, there was a certain calm that, hey, as soon as we're able to do it, we're going to get it done, and this is what we're going to do. And even though there were a lot of people at NEMA, in the EOC, the command center where things happen, there was organized buzzing. It was almost like a beehive. A lot of people don't,
No, because I was going to ask, you were very nice the way you couched that organized buzzing. There was organization.
Yes.
I mean, ordinarily you think
There-
a hurricane is there, people are just running around.
But you got to remember, when it comes to response, things are happening, things are coming at you so fast, you know. And we live in archipelago, and this is not one or two islands. This is down to settlements and
Yeah.
keys.
Yeah.
You know, this happened on this key, and when you're planning a response there, you find out that, hey, this settlement is experiencing this. This is catastrophic devastation in Marsh Harbor. And you're trying to find out exactly what's happening on the ground, and all of those things in the
To
first...
determine-
to determine how to respond.
Yeah, yeah.
In the first 48 hours, those things were absolutely very, very difficult.
So you walk in there and there's buzzing, everything is organized. What are you, John Clarke,
Thinking,
what's your first order of business? What are you thinking as well?
the first thing that came to my mind is, boy, I need to read the NEMO manual. That was my very first thought.
Yeah.
That, look, if I'm going to be here, I need to get up to speed on how they function, what the processes are. So when I come back tomorrow, at least I can have an intelligent conversation on how all of these moving parts are supposed to work together. So apart from the way that I'm trained as a project manager, the first thing you do is you gather your data so you know what it is that you're dealing with.
And you can properly assess.
And you could properly assess. And from September 2nd till today, that assessment has been ongoing.
Continuous. Yeah.
It's continuous. Even while I'm sitting here, I'm thinking it's continuous assessment.
Is that because the situation is more
It's fluid.
fluid?
It's
Yeah.
fluid. It's dynamic. And you go from situation to situation, finding the best resolution. And you have no time to rest on your laurels in a storm. You can't say, oh, wow, we got food to that settlement. Let me take a breather. No,
Not possible.
not possible.
All right, we got to take a break. We're going to talk some more about what you're doing down there. But we got to take a break. You're watching A Closer Look, Anthony NEWBOLD with Mr. John Michael Clarke. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony NEWBOLD speaking with John Michael Clarke. You are in NEMA now and you're assessing what's going on. There's some people who believe NEMA as presently configured needs some help. It's not quite where it ought to be in being able to handle those responsibilities that it has. Mm-hmm. And your view is?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the word NEMA becomes the personification of a lot of frustration people feel in disasters. How NEMA works is, NEMA is a management and coordinating agency that relies on other agencies in order for it to function properly. And those agencies, in turn, rely on NGOs to assist them, particularly on the social services side, and in all of the ESFs, well, I should say emergency support functions. They are either international NGOs that assist, or ordinary social partners that exist.
So people need to understand.
So people need to understand that no, there are not 200 people working at NEMA.
Right.
NEMA manages and coordinates the emergency functions that enable the disaster response.
What is your relationship with NEMA?
So, my relationship with NEMA is there were two functions. One, to assist with the interface between the public sector and the private sector. because usually in the response, what you have is you have a lot of private sector vendors that want to help. So I was there to assist, to help NEMA to sort through the private sector partners and make sure that they are properly integrated into the response effort. So it was a project management resource function, as well as to assist NEMA with just the general project management and process functions that they were carrying out during the storm response.
The Prime Minister has said that he believes that NEMA should be reconfigured. Is that something you might play a role in?
We'll see.
We'll see.
I am there at the invitation of the Prime Minister. I accepted that invitation. And if that invitation is extended to a broader role, when that is extended, I'll consider.
You and some people have said that maybe NEMA has not, maybe the entire operation, there's not been enough effective communication as to how you're doing what you're doing or exactly what was going on.
Well, I think in terms of communication, it's been a growing process. When you are dealing with dynamic situation, a situation that is as fluid and as dynamic as this level of disaster, at 11 o'clock in the morning, you think that it's okay to communicate this one thing, for example. 1 o'clock comes, what you thought was very important at 11 o'clock, that's been displaced by a bigger thing to communicate. And then in this instance, given the amount of catastrophe and the extent of the catastrophe, there are a lot of things to communicate, a lot of media, and you are competing with active social media.
Yes.
Some of which is driven by rumors, and it's kind of hard even to weave the truth into all of the rumors that are out there. And
Because you can't answer all of them.
Yeah, because you can't answer all of them. And unfortunately, the reputation of the name of the frustration, NEMA, is such that even when the truth comes out of NEMA, people just dismiss it.
Yeah. What has been, as you're in there now, what has been the most difficult part of this assignment for you, if you can put your fingers on a thing or a group of things?
Well, when it comes to assessing projects and project needs, I don't necessarily think of assignments in terms of their difficulty. I mean, there are some challenges, and I think communications and the effectiveness of the communications has been a challenge, but even that is being constantly assessed. And we are always addressing the ways that information ought to be communicated. And not that we don't put the communications out there, it's making sure that the communication takes the proper route so that people have the confidence that, hey, this comes from NEMA, it is true, it is benefit. So that's challenging. Another challenge really has, in terms of the response, I think the persons at NEMA in Nassau, they've worked very hard. I mean, the first 2 weeks, working 16, 17 hours a day for somebody in that operation, that was normal. I think on the Family Islands, one of the biggest challenges was actually getting the information out and providing support to both Abaco and Grand Bahama in a manner where it seemed very, very effective, evenly effective across the board, and that takes some time.
Yeah, because I was about to say, generally people are hearing, and I guess because Abaco arguably suffered the most damage, we kept hearing about Abaco, but we weren't hearing as much about Grand Bahama. You're comfortable with the attention, for example, that's being paid to what is happening in Grand Bahama?
Well, we're comfortable with the awareness that we have of what the needs are.
Okay.
We're not comfortable with the level of attention.
Okay.
We're not comfortable with the level of attention in Abaco or Grand Bahama. because we need to apply more resources so that the response can be effective, so that we can have a proper baseline for recovery and reconstruction. And when I say we're not comfortable, what it means is that collectively, and this is a social collective, this is a citizen collective, all of us need to realize that, hey, look, this isn't a NEMA's response.
Yeah.
This is a country's response.
Yeah.
And all of us, where there are deficiencies or where people see that there are deficiencies in the response organization as NEMA, all of us need to find a way to help both Abaco and Grand Bahama recover and ease that frustration.
What is your role in determining, and I presume this will come from your assessment, your role in determining who gets what in terms of attention, resources, whatever it is they get?
In terms of determining which island gets what resources, that's really a function of the EOC manager, who is Ms. Gail Munker, and that is done collectively.
Okay.
You know, the EOC is the command center. That's the heart of the response, and they have meetings every day, 9 and 6, and there they discuss what the critical needs are, where attention ought to be focused, and in the list of the many priorities, of course, you know, in a disaster, everything is a priority, but in those priorities, there are the most critical priorities. They decide what the most critical priorities are, and we all zero in on those critical priorities. A part of my function is whatever support I can lend from a project management or logistics point of view to help them execute responding to those critical priorities quicker or better. That's what I do.
Okay, and we got to take this final break. And we'll be back with Mr. John Michael Clarke, co-chair of the Relief and Reconstruction Committee, after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony NEWBOLD, speaking with Mr. John Michael Clarke. Relief and reconstruction is his focus. Talking about Abaco still. People are beginning to return to Abaco, and there's some concern about that. Who's monitoring that? Do you know?
Well, right now we are trying to strengthen the government function on the ground in Abaco. As you can imagine, during the storm, a lot of the public servants on the ground, they experienced the storm.
Right.
They experienced the loss. They experienced the trauma. At NEMA, we recognize some strengthening is needed, and we are actively strengthening the core. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force and the Royal Bahamas Police Force, they are carefully monitoring the situation now. We are thinking how we can expand that operation to include the full function of government.
Yeah.
What we've done is we've made provisions to provide housing, and we should take temporary housing units down there.
Okay, is that the same? That's different from something that the Prime Minister again has mentioned, and we hear discussion about it in the public. Tent cities is that what?
These are two separate things.
Separate things.
So these are actually mobile trailers that we want to incorporate into NEMA's rapid response for future storms.
Right.
So if this happens again, NEMA can mobilize its government functions very quickly anywhere in the country. So those units will be dispatched. Now, the notion of tent, well, first of all, let me dispel the notion that there's no such thing. There's not going to be a tent city.
Okay.
In Abaco. What we're building is we're building dome structures and these structures are semi-permanent or permanent structures that can take up to 180 mile per hour wind. And they can take gusts up to 200 miles per hour. And the solution makes sense because we are prone to additional storms.
Yes.
The best tent we could find had a maximum resistance of up to 80 miles per hour or 100 miles per hour. So what
Yeah.
that meant is, in the heart of the hurricane season, if something else were to pass through, we'd have to evacuate again. So the good folks at the Ministry of Works, Department of Housing, Brickell Management, and the private sector group, I think Robbie Myers was a part of that group, Mike Mora, Ed Fields, they searched and they came up with a geodesic dome solution
Okay.
that we will be employing in Abaco.
And this geodesic domes will be for public housing.
This would be, we call it for family relief.
Okay.
And who goes there? I know there's a lot of discussion about
Who
who
will
goes
occupy
there.
those?
And the policymakers will give us the protocols of who actually qualifies to be in the relief center. And once we have the protocols for those persons, the center will be ready for their use.
And going back again, you need to put some structures, you need to create some structures, you need to construct some buildings for the NEMA people.
Yes.
For future storms.
For future storms, well, there would be the rapid response trailers for future storms. And of course, our primary concern right now is making sure that whatever we need for government to function
Right.
is there. So we'll deploy a cohort of those trailers into Marsh Harbor so that all of the relevant agencies can send personnel to get government up and running again. And that's really, really needed so that we can finish the infrastructure. We can have the business commerce tied together. We can have business commerce started again. These things go hand in hand.
And you need to have some law and order.
And we need to have some law and order. So some of those would be for the police and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force as well.
Right. Everybody, again, we're talking about shelters, and 100 miles an hour is out the window now. Who's constructing, who's going to be responsible for building some real shelters?
Okay, so when we talk about shelters, and this, I had a discussion with somebody yesterday, and they were talking about, well, you know, the shelters weren't up to code and all of this. There are two things regarding buildings. Right now, our codes say that if you're constructing a building, it should take 150 miles per hour sustained winds. But there are two things that go along with that. One, it's making sure you have the right materials and that they're used properly. And two, making sure that the code is actually enforced the way that it ought to be enforced. You see? What happens if any one of those two things fail? You're going to have structural failure. So in some instances, it isn't a question that the code is deficient. It could be a question that the way that a building was constructed is deficient.
Or the materials used.
Or the materials used was deficient. We had a site visit, and we saw that the hurricane clips, they're supposed to be on both sides of the rafter. They were either on one side, and the fastening tools that they used, the types of nails, something as simple as the type of nail, could make a difference in how a structure functions.
So inspection is key.
Inspection is key.
Well, inspection and enforcement.
And enforcement is key.
How much money has NEMA got? Do you know? Has been donated? How much money has been donated? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea what the total amount is. I can tell you that it's not tens of millions of dollars. I know that for a fact.
The donated items for Hurricane Dorian, they're getting to where they need to get to?
Yes. As best as we can get them out, the donated items are getting where they need to go. And what people have to remember in a storm is quite a bit of logistics that happens. NEMA is like a bulk distributor.
Okay.
And NEMA will send out to a settlement, and there on the settlement, NGOs and private social partners break down what is sent in bulk into packages for distribution. NEMA ordinarily does not make those packages. So social partners like Head Nodes, the Red Cross, they become very, very important when it comes to assisting NEMA with getting the goods out. But in a bulk sense, no, you heard the story, oh, the stuff is just rotting in the warehouse. That's
not true.
That's not true.
Generally, though, you think you and the team have your hands around what you need to do.
We have a strategy for trying to accomplish an effective response and program an effective recovery and even greater reconstruction. But we all are the team.
Yeah.
So it isn't like we are NEMA and the team here. We all are the team. The country is the team. And we have to see this recovery and response to this catastrophic event as a country's response.
All right, thank you, and you were right. You have to come back again. Okay?
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can also watch this on Facebook and on YouTube and hear us on radio, Monday nights at 8 and Sunday afternoons at 3 o'clock.